News from Russia just dropped regarding their handling of Bitcoin and other digital assets in international settlements. And it is a shot across the bow of the global dollar system. Moscow just signaled that it's ready to use Bitcoin and other digital currencies for cross border trade while tightening control at home. This move directly targets US sanctions and could reshape how nations settle value on the world stage. So today on Why Are We Bullish, we've got an awesome panel to talk about this and much, much more. We have Prof St Onge, American economist, making daily videos on economics and freedom. Erik Cason, author of Crypto Sovereignty, currently building the sovereign self-custody AI, many different self-hosted things with Vora, and we'll hear more about that in a bit. And of course, we've got Marko, host of WhiteBoard Finance on YouTube. So what do our guests have to say about this situation? What does it mean for global trade, financial sovereignty? Is this the beginning of a new monetary front, a $37 trillion reset, or is this political theater from a sanctioned state? So we're going to find out. So stick around, drop a like on the video, and stay tuned. It's going to be an awesome show. I'm Ben with the Btcsessions, and this is your daily session. I want to welcome to the stage Marko, Erik Cason, and Prof St Onge. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you joining me to get bullish on a Wednesday. And I want to seed a little bit of a chat to begin with, and then we're going to find out why each of you are currently bullish, what you're currently excited about in and around Bitcoin. But before we dive into it, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this Russia thing that came out. I'm going to share an article here. And this is, maybe I'll put us off to the side here. So Moscow Times, there's a number of other articles here. Russia moves to tighten control over cryptocurrency market while legalizing cross-border payments. So they're preparing sweeping new regulations for the country's cryptocurrency market with plans to legalize cross-border transactions while sharply tightening penalties for other crypto operations. This area must receive proper legislative regulation so we can restore order to the sector. This is Finance Minister Anton. I'm not going to try the last name here. Now, it's already being used to pay for imports and move foreign currency abroad. And the financial ministry has reached an agreement with the central bank to bring order to the market through stronger regulatory oversight. Now, it does also, while allowing them to do cross-border, which, you know, is obviously a direct response to being kicked off SWIFT. They're experimenting. They're trying new things. However, it is a little case of they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, because it says the framework also includes tools to monitor transactions linked to, quote, corruption, terrorism, extremism, and drug trafficking. Now, this is interesting when it comes to terrorism. I actually host a quarterly webinar with a girl named Anna Chekovich, and she is Russian. And we basically teach political dissidents how to use Bitcoin to fund their operations in places where they get their bank accounts shut down. So when she was within Russia, she was actively working against Putin. And in that instance, the anti-corruption foundation that she was working with, at one point, she was in charge of financials, checked the bank account, and they had gone in and not only removed all their money, but put them so negative in balance that it was like negative 1 trillion rubles in the bank account. Like, it was laughable what it was. And so anyways, she's now no longer in Russia, and she's actually designated as a terrorist in Russia. So there's certain, like, if there is a country that is friendly with Russia, she cannot go there. So besides the point, Russia is clearly trying to get the advantages of Bitcoin without giving those same advantages to individuals. But of course, that's not exactly how Bitcoin works. It's kind of a level playing field for all if you use the tools properly. So my general question to you guys is, are stories like this leading us? Is this kind of the currency wars that have been talked about for years here? Is this a shift in that narrative? Is this a response to, as I said, being kicked off SWIFT? And does it become more predominant? How are you viewing this? So whoever wants to dive in first.
Yeah, so I'll be the first one to say that my wife is actually Ukrainian and my ethnicity is Serbian. So I kind of follow some of this stuff, not so much specifically with what we're talking about right now, but I will say that the US dollar for a long time now, especially in the East, has somewhat been weaponized. So I think that with Russia being kicked off the SWIFT banking system, I think they're looking for almost like an exit ramp as well. So they've been allies with China for a while now. Same thing with all the other countries that may be looked at as like dissidents or less popular, like Belarus with Lukashenko and potentially India and the other BRIC countries. But the fact is that whether we're talking about the $37 trillion in debt or, that we're trying to get rid of, is the fact that the BRIC countries will have to one day actually work together. And that's the thing. I don't know if they trust each other enough to do that. And that's why I still think that US dollar dominance is here to stay for a little bit. I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 10 years, 30 years, or 50 years. But the thing that people need to realize is that all these BRIC countries, if you look at Modi from India, he's in his 70s. Lukashenko's in his 70s. Putin's in his 70s. A lot of these people, they may not be around for a long time. Xi Jinping, he's in his 70s. So whether this has to do with United States debt or with Russia claiming that's what we're trying to do, I think that eventually nation states that want to get out of that US dollar dominance are going to have to adopt something. And I think that thing right now is either gold or Bitcoin. And that's just what I've been seeing over the past, 10, 15 years or so.
Interesting. Peter, I'll talk with you.
Yeah, I think that's right. These countries are trying to get out of the dollar system, and fundamentally, so initially I was concerned about BRICS, concerned or excited. I thought it might amount to something because China and Russia had both been talking for a long time about having some kind of gold-backed currency. And that felt to me like that could be a real threat to the dollar. It would obviously be far more attractive. The only reason why that doesn't happen today is because you don't have the transaction volume. So you have much, much lower transaction costs associated with the dollar. So if BRICS could get together and it could actually put significant amounts onto a gold-backed currency, then that could sort of leapfrog it to the point where you have low enough transaction costs that combining that with the fact that your balances aren't losing value, or at least they're not losing as quickly because they're in gold, that could be a killer app against the dollar. This past year, BRICS has, I think, morphed into, now they're looking at a currency basket. That, to me, turns into an absolute joke, rubbish, next. I mean, India, Brazil, Russia, these are all complete basket cases in terms of inflation, in terms of currency debasement, in terms of rule of law in their financial system. China's pretty good on inflation, but it's even worse than everything else. The yuan doesn't even freely trade overseas. It's just, it's like you took all of the, guys strung out on fentanyl and got them together and said, yeah, this is my new army. It's just pathetic. So I think sort of shoehorning this into the currency wars narrative, I personally think that BRICS, as it stands today, is an absolute joke. It's a bunch of drowning men who figure that if they all hold on to each other, they'll save each other when actually they're just going to drown faster. I think what's happening here is more sort of the classic Bitcoin meme, Bitcoin fixes this. The running joke is that Bitcoiners wheel that out whenever anything happens. There's a global warming, Bitcoin fixes this. And I think that that's really what's happening here. And, when you look at when Bitcoin first came out, it was a tool against bank bailouts. And then it was a tool against inflation. And then it was a tool to save Canadian truckers from a despotic regime. And now it's international sanctions, right? So I think sort of the big takeaway here is that currency is immensely powerful. It touches on a lot of different things, a lot of them having to do with power, a lot of them having to do with just wealth. And in this case, Russia is clearly trying to get out from under the sanctions. They've been trying to build up their own versions of, there's a SWIFT in China, CIPS, there's another one in Russia. They've been trying to build those up. Those are still pretty anemic. I think this is part of it. The good news, I think what makes it bullish for Bitcoin is that there's a lot of countries that have issues with the United States. And if those countries are forced into crypto, crypto itself sucks, but it's kind of like if there's some factor that's pushing countries into a commodity money, yes, some of them are going to start out with wheat or steel, but they're all going to end up in gold. So similarly, even if these countries are starting out with Dogecoin, okay, fine, but they're going to end up on a long enough timeline on Bitcoin. So for that reason, I think it's structurally bullish for Bitcoin. I don't think this is a big move in the currency wars.
Erik, I'll toss to you.
Yeah, like Peter pointed out that, like everything's good for Bitcoin. And this is sort of ironic because with BRICS being the shit show that it is, like it's a bunch of the criminal class getting together, try to figure out like, how are we not going to be criminals against each other? And then like, it turns out that like the only way that we can do that is like having this fixed currency that we have an ability to actually exchange in a meaningful way that like, I can't just rip you off. And the problem with gold is I can definitely screw you over if you're going to try to custody your gold with me or me with you. And Bitcoin like fixes this in a pretty radical way. And same thing with like, now that you have these sort of regimes fighting about like, what's the standard we're going to go to, even if they go to some shit coin like Dogecoin or whatever Ethereum based garbage that they want to have. Now they've gotten into this system and they go, like it turns out that like, Modi coin or like Putin bucks or whatever the hell they kind of end up with really sucks. They're going to at least get like, oh, like it turns out this Bitcoin thing's like pretty good. And we can like secure it in such a way that we can do cross-border payments meaningfully. And I think the funniest thing is that with what Russia just did, like there's a very clear signal internationally that like, this is a powerful tool for cross-border payments that we can use in a system that's hostile to us. But like, don't look at this, citizens. You got like it's bad news, and we need to establish control. And like if you played this game with us before, like this merry-go-round's pretty fun, but like it's a little overplayed. Of that, like this is what the government does when it wants to lock down control. It's we need to reestablish order. This is about terrorism and kiddie porn and other terrible things that we can't have in the world. So please give us power, and we'll make sure that you don't have it. So I just think it's really ironic that they're just signaling to their own populace that like, hey, this is a really powerful tool that we need to extricate ourselves from the circumstances, but you guys don't need it. So don't look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll echo the again, the having their cake and eating it too is not going to pan out well for them. Even again, like with Anna and the Anti-Corruption Foundation, for the longest time, they just had a singular Bitcoin address as their donation address. And, bad for privacy. There's implications they've learned since then. But the fact of the matter remains that for a little while, they were like, I mean, sure, they can see how much was donated to us. Fuck them. What are they going to do? Like you can't steal it. Now, again, privacy implications for donors and stuff like that. So since that's now changed, but on the face, like if the keys are properly held and secured, it's going to work for everybody. So excellent tool. And I look forward to countries realizing it's useful for them and also realizing that they can't make it not useful for individuals and people within their own borders. So with that, I'm going to change gears because this show, of course, Why Are We Bullish, is to find out why you guys are currently excited, what is top of mind for you in Bitcoin and tangential topics. And so I'm going to start here with Marko of WhiteBoard Finance. Dude, welcome back to the show, first off. And secondly, same question everybody gets, why are you bullish?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. And thanks, Nathan, again in the chat for inviting me again. So basically, I've been talking a little bit about gold the last, I don't know, I'd say pretty much since January, February of this year of 2025. I think gold bugs and Bitcoiners, we're literally two sides of the same coin, except that I said this on the last one, last time I was on here, is that I feel like gold bugs are almost pessimistic about the future and Bitcoiners are optimists about the future. We believe in the same principles, but, I feel like gold is running because if you watch that episode with Luke Roman over on What Bitcoin Did, Shout out to Luke. He's also a fellow Clevelander. Basically, he's talking about how if gold actually gets repriced again to where it typically is with certain ratios of how many foreigners hold treasuries and things like that, we should be at like $16,000 an ounce gold, right? But the problem with that is that gold can be repriced at any time. Fiat can be inflated. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It can't be printed. It can't be seized. It can't be revalued by decree, because if they raise rates, it may hurt our position. It may detonate the dollar. It may lose us our world reserve currency if someone else steps up to the plate, which based on our conversation earlier, I don't think is going to happen. If they cut rates, they debase the dollar, which they may do a couple more times this year. And if they print more, they're going to try and, inflate away our obligations, right? And ultimately, where does that printing go? It goes back into the greatest form of money ever created, which we all know is Bitcoin. So mine is more of like a base structural case of like, everyone knows the money's made up. Everyone knows, it's basically monopoly money at this point, and always has been. But that money is now going to an asset that is much more better than gold, in my opinion, which obviously is Bitcoin. So it's basically just getting back to the fundamentals. There's some technological things that we can talk about, but if you want to look at like hash rate, it's never been higher. Infrastructure is there now, and I think nation states are obviously getting on board. But just from a macro lens, where is the money, the printed money, going to go? It's going to go into hard assets, and for me, that's Bitcoin.
Awesome. I'm curious on your guys' thoughts on gold's. Marko put in his piece here, but Peter, Erik, the thoughts on what's been happening to gold and Bitcoin kind of crab walking and dipping sideways the last little bit. I know these are very short term kind of things, but what do you think is the mindset that's contributing to what we've been seeing lately?
Yeah, Erik, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think that just because of the classic worldview that there has been, like gold is the classic safe harbor asset, and it's very clear that the direction that we're going, that our governments are highly incompetent and that they're never going to be able to actually resolve these debt problems in a meaningful way, so that you should find yourself into a hard asset class. It also turns out that, it's really the over 50 crowd that owns the vast majority of things, and they tend to be a bit more not technologically as savvy as the younger generation. So it makes sense to me that gold's going to tear in this direction like this. And also, like, I think Bitcoin's crab walking because of a lot of the sort of paper Bitcoin games that we've seen being played. And it's pretty interesting because I feel a lot like the cycle that we saw in 2021 is playing out again, in that we'll probably see some of these Bitcoin treasury companies blow themselves up. And I think that'll be this clear signal that, like, now we're going to tear super hard. And I'm happy that gold gets to have its round. Congratulations, you guys. You guys have made the second best bet that there has been available from quite a long time. And you guys have been, and you've held on dearly for a long time to get that. So congratulations. I'm really happy for you. I just hope that when we rip past you at 250K in the next 2 years, that you're going to really be like, okay, like maybe these Bitcoiner guys get something. But yeah, like we're not against each other at all. Like, we're much closer. And I think that there's a lot of camaraderie to be found with each other. And I'm actually going to be really excited when somebody finally figures out, like, let's do like a hybrid gold Bitcoin treasury kind of company, and figuring out a way to kind of do that. Because I think that has a really strong offer. So I'm really bullish, just sort of seeing that more and more people are actually coming to the table and getting what's going on. And, just anecdotally, I now present to people like, hey, it's crazy that we're still paying into Social Security when it's obvious that, like, we will never get to touch any of that money ever. And they're like, yeah, like that doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, maybe you should like own an asset that like actually has a proven denominator. Just something to think about. So I found people to be much more receptive because of sort of the narratives that are playing out. And it feels like we're much farther along in people sort of getting a general understanding versus, even 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the debasement trade, I think that's absolutely right, that, this sort of long-term trends on government debt, government deficits, there are, I think most of the major countries in the world now have deficits that are 4, 5, 6%. That used to only happen in an absolute catastrophic recession. Okay, and you've got the U.S. is 1.8 trillion, so that's about 6%. Japan, most of Europe, Germany, which had traditionally been very, very fiscally conservative, is, I think they're looking at about 3% now. Again, these are all numbers. These were like horror show numbers for our whole lives, all the way back to the Nixon shock. And now this is the new normal. We are eventually going to have a recession here. And, you know, history says that when you hit a recession, those deficits tend to blow up. Historically, maybe 2 or 4% on top of that. We'd be looking at 8-10% deficits. That's ridiculous. That's far worse than Japan had been doing at its worst spell these past couple of decades. That's getting into Weimar territory. And so I think what happens, what Erik mentioned earlier, you've got different demographics on Bitcoin and gold. Silver is probably somewhere in between. And so I think that the Bitcoiners tend to perceive these things really fast, right? They're aware, they're passionate, they're still thinking about their future. The median gold, I don't have any statistics on this, but I'm going to guess the median gold owner is probably in their mid 60s. They're not paying attention to their assets so much. They're pretty much out of the game. They've got a park. They got the permanent portfolio with the 28% in gold. They're not following it day to day, but they do on a lag. And so I think that gold and silver are sort of catching up to Bitcoin in terms of why is the crab walk happening now, right? Bitcoin had a hell of a year last year. Gold and silver did not. I think that to a certain degree, the demographics are catching up. I think another factor on the crab walk is that a lot of what's driving price in Bitcoin is adoption factors, right? So you've got the Russia thing, you've got Trump with his Bitcoin reserve, which, you know, right after the election, it looked like he was going to pay back Bitcoiners, and then he didn't. He paid in regulatory changes, but he hasn't established a Bitcoin reserve for anything beyond seizures. You've also got little just sort of drips and drabs from all over the world. So Sweden, a couple of MPs in Sweden introduced a bill pushing for a Bitcoin reserve in Sweden. That's a country that could catch on for other European countries as well. You had a move in Japan recently to allow banks to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So there's a lot of adoption moves in Bitcoin, and depending on the ebbs and flows of that can then impact price. ETFs, you know, of course, that's been probably the biggest story over the past year. So those can affect it. Whereas when you look at gold or silver, there's little movements here and there. I think Texas moved to make gold and silver legal tender. You've got a little bit of sort of this adoption type, news factors, but I don't think they're as substantial as they are in Bitcoin. And then, of course, gold is just a larger market, right? So if banks can hold gold on their balance sheet versus if they can hold Bitcoin, one of those is going to have a much, much bigger effect because the size of Bitcoin, it's roughly 2 trillion market cap. That's about 10 times smaller than gold. It's like a tsunami running up a canyon, right? A little bit of water goes a long ways.
And just to the demographic part in and around gold versus Bitcoin, I've seen an interesting thing this year. Just looking at demographics, just even on the channel, I'm looking right now, and between 45 to 65 makes up roughly 50% of my entire audience is in that demographic. So, kind of, further into your careers, probably have a few assets, have some disposable income, have some savings. And those people are beginning to, a lot of them are former or current gold bugs that are understanding that Bitcoin is a play on that with improvements when it comes to physicality, transportability, divisibility, all those things. They're seeing like, oh, geez, like I understand why this is. Now I need to understand how to utilize it. And so it's really cool to kind of see that specific demographic hone in on it, because it's a lot of people that get the why, but are maybe a little technologically timid. And I think that's kind of why they hone in, because there's lots of tutorials and stuff like that. So I'm excited about that dynamic there. And if it's any indication, again, you've got a demographic that didn't grow up with Bitcoin always being there. But now we're going to have a younger generation that grows up to take on that demographic that will have always had Bitcoin as an option there, and will maybe think it's a little less odd, maybe have a little less questions in and around the why, and will already know the how. So the coming decades could be very, very interesting. So I will also say before we shift gears, because I want to find out why both Erik and Peter are bullish coming up here. But there's a lot of new people that tune into this show every week. So first off, I want to say welcome to you guys. But I also want to say it's great to talk about current events and all of these fun things in and around Bitcoin. But if you're not actually then taking action and learning some of the tools and actually you're learning how to self-custody, people understand the reason why you would have physical gold. But if you're buying Bitcoin, you're leaving it with a custodian or something like that, you're losing all of the benefits. It's like buying a gold ETF. Where's the gold? It's maybe over there, maybe not. Same thing with Bitcoin. You need to learn the tools. So I always trumpet this quite a bit, but check out, I have a page where I put up a bunch of like basic free tutorials that you can go through. There's a QR code on the screen, or just go to btcsessions.ca/learn. It's in the show notes, but there's just some basic videos. You can just follow along, pick one at a time, and just learn a skill at a time, and just learn how to get a wallet, learn how to secure it, all those kinds of things. Super, super important. If you take those steps, you're going to be that much more self-sovereign, and you're not going to have to worry about the state 6102ing your Bitcoin at some point. So with that, we're going to do a rotation here. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break. We'll give a shout out to sponsors of the show. On the other side, Erik, I'm going to be coming to you. I'm going to be finding out why you're so damn bullish. Everybody else that's watching, drop a like on the video if you're enjoying the conversation. We will be right back in just a moment. Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTCsessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions. CoinKite has been in the game for years, creating hands down the best and most secure hardware when it comes to securing your Bitcoin. The Cold Card Q is an absolute powerhouse and my daily driver, and it's ideal for newcomers and advanced users alike. The Tap Signer gives you a low-cost, user-friendly option for those just getting started or for convenience when traveling. You can head to coinkite.com and use code BTCSessions for discounts, or simply scan the QR code on the screen to get started right away. DEBIFI is the best and easiest way to borrow against your Bitcoin in a non-custodial way. Funds are held in a multisig escrow where you hold a key, and the platform allows for excellent hardware like the Cold Card Mark IV and the Q. You have access to flexible conditions, the best rates, and institutional grade liquidity. If you're looking to make use of your capital, don't sell your Bitcoin, borrow against it. You can head over to DEBIFI.com to check them out, or simply scan the QR code on the screen. All right, we are back in, and Erik, I'm going down to you again. Thank you for rejoining me. It was, by the way, it was great. I know it was a while ago now, but it was great having you come visit Calgary, come to the Bitcoin Rodeo, but also more importantly, the SAT market. I was stoked to see you there at our local Bitcoin circular economy. Was a fantastic time. So thanks for being here. How have you been, by the way, last little bit?
Absolutely. I'm doing great. I'm loving life. I work out of a Bitcoin co-working space here in San Francisco called Presidio Bitcoin, and meet all kinds of brilliant developers and individuals that are building just really cool and different projects that are really kind of on the cutting edge of innovation. So I've learned a lot more about Lightning and Cashew, and and that's one of the reasons I'm super bullish, is just kind of talking to these people that are really kind of at the cutting edge of building really great and interesting projects. And then just sort of looking at the global landscape, like more and more, I think people are becoming aware of just how extraordinarily dysfunctional our government systems are, and how absolutely incompetent the sort of leadership we has. And a lot of people are sort of really realizing, like, no one is going to come and save you. There is no way to vote our way out of this. And like I think it's really interesting with what Elon Musk did with Doge and how big and dramatic the cuts were and how unsubstantial they were in the long run and how much extraordinary backlash came from that. And it just highlights like this is not a solution that we're going to find within our traditional political systems, which is alarming for how that sort of plays out long term. But I think that it's also really bullish for Bitcoiners because we have an actual solution. And like this is a great solution. That means that even though the Titanic is sinking, there's lifeboats still. You can get on one. And like ironically, there isn't a giant line for them right now because most people are convinced that, hey, the orchestra is still playing. There's no way that the Titanic could sink. And then it's like, guys, like just do the very basic math that like shows that these numbers cannot ever add up in any meaningful way. And it's kind of interesting because I've noticed that like I have to coax people a little into it, but eventually they go, yeah, like I'm never going to see Social Security. Yeah, there's no way we're going to pay down that debt. Yeah, it is super alarming that we're adding more than $1 trillion in new debt. Like what, like every 6 months at this point in time or something insane like that? Like this is truly bonkers. And like I don't know, I think a lot about like how if we took the conversation today and like plopped it down to the 1990s, like people would just be like wigging out and they'd be like, none of this makes any sense. Like we're all going to die immediately. And it's like, well, maybe not quite that. But so I always feel pretty good about it because when I come up against people's very nihilistic viewpoints, I go, hey, like it is alarming, but like there's this thing called Bitcoin. Like you should really inform yourself about it. Like there is a way that you could actually own something for real that can't get extracted from you. And to your point, like you need to understand what self-custody is. And that's like a really important process because like very much like if, you know, there is a giant earthquake or some crisis happens that causes for the economy to collapse, like you're going to need to actually have your ability to have custody of either your gold or in this case, Bitcoin. And particularly like if you find that you're in a country where you could get labeled as a political dissident or otherwise, you need to be able to cross borders where people are going to, you know, you're not going to be able to carry anything with you, which is the problem that gold has always had. So I feel like we're at a place that I'm more bullish than ever. And particularly with seeing this crab walk thing going on, to me, that's a massively bullish signal because we've seen all of this development that's been happening over the last 6 months, that more companies are getting a Bitcoin treasury. We're having more individuals understanding what it is. So to me, this has felt like the preliminary cycle before every bull cycle. And it's like, I mean, we're complaining about a crab walk and we're like 10% below the all-time high, which is like 5x what it was 3 years ago, you know? So like we're in a really great position. And each bull cycle that I've seen, this is sort of the behavior that it has before it tears super hard. So I'm excited about watching the rocket go to the moon. And, you know, if you're out there listening and have a little bit of curiosity, you should really buy some so that you can get your seat on the rocket ship rather than lamenting about how you missed out on your opportunity.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, I do think that there's a general understanding from your average person nowadays that shit's broken. Like it's just impossibly broken. They see, you know, the numbers I think are lost on people, but they know inherently like, yeah, there's always more debt. They know that, you know, nothing is going to get paid back. They know that everything is ridiculous. I mean, the Doge thing, because even I didn't really dive into, you know, the staggering scope of how much money is being blown on what versus what was being cut. And so to see all of these cuts, which, you know, most of which were very valid, like, why the hell are we paying for this, that, and the other thing? And it is a great thing to question and do and cut. But then to see it basically just not matter on the scope of what's actually still being spent in the proposed forward-facing budgets was staggering. Peter, I'm kind of curious. Do you recall? I'm sure you must have covered it at some point, where with Doge they were looking into where money was being spent and all this stuff, and they discovered, if I'm not mistaken, just a number of computers around the country that wouldn't even be pulling money from anywhere in particular. It would just be like making shit up on the spot to cover expenses and just like sending it literally from nothing. Do you recall that story?
Yeah, it was billions of dollars. And one of the things that big balls and them were trying to do was to put tags on these to identify like what was the payment for. And apparently there were, thousands of government workers who they apparently had authority to just pay stuff.
Like, from nowhere.
They didn't have
like not even through the Treasury and Fed, like nothing.
Yeah, there was no requirement. And, anybody who's worked in a company, you can't just cut a check. You can't just sign the check and like not indicate anywhere what it's for. It's pretty incredible. And, we're seeing scandals now. Like there's this one in California with the homeless money. So I guess 30 billion or something went out to fix the homeless problem. The homeless problem, of course, is worse than ever. And our side had been saying, this is being pilfered. And it turns out, yes, it was all pilfered. So, you got these guys who are living high on the hog. So, I mean, it's just across the board. Everything government touches is corrupt. This has been true for thousands of years. Like, this is not because Donald Trump or Mark Carney. I mean, government has always been corrupt. The reason it's corrupt is because the people who own it are not running it. This is 101, agent principal problem, incentives alignment. And, this is part of why people like Hans Hermann Hoppe push to have a king again. Although if you look at kings today, I don't know if there would be an improvement. I don't know if you guys saw the king in Thailand.
Oh, no. Like it's just, well, I'm like what's going on? Like, this is also fucking embarrassing across the board. Like, we're being fleeced, and like we're all sitting here like casual, like, oh yeah, like billions of dollars were just like printed up by governments, like par for the course. And it's so insane. And it just deeply hurts my heart, because like, what are we actually going to leave to our kids in any meaningful way, and how do we address this in any proper way? And I'm at the place that, like, I tell people very readily, like, fuck voting. It will never make any sort of difference. And how absolutely disingenuous you are to me that you tell me that voting matters. When, let me know, like, can I vote to see how much money goes to different war industries? Do I get to vote and figure out how this budget works? No. So, like, what's even the fucking point? So please, actually, if you want to do the one thing that matters, exit the financial system. Use Bitcoin to actually help yourself in a meaningful way, so that when this shit does finally blow up, as is very clear to everybody, you'll be in a position to at least help your family and friends in some kind of meaningful way, rather than being like, well, if you guys had just voted harder for the other guy, this wouldn't be happening.
It's the illusion of choice. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first, you guys. That's what I've been preaching on my channel for years. Whether it's equities, which we all know are overinflated, whether it's, precious metals, whether it's collectibles, whether it's Bitcoin. I mean, you guys have to put something that's going to preserve your purchasing power, period, because the government's not going to do it for you. I think we're going to get to a point where, if you guys are of the Jeff Booth school of technology is deflationary, what the hell are my kids going to be doing in 20 years, right? Is college even worth going for them? What's a Honda Accord going to cost in 30 years? $80,000, literally. So I think people need to understand that you got to invest your money in things that are going to preserve your real world labor, whatever that means. And it has to preserve your purchasing power, period. Because we're all getting decimated by inflation.
Yeah. On the Thailand, sorry, Peter, if you, I feel woefully uninformed on what the Thai king did. So please inform me. And then I've got some little something to sprinkle on top of that. That's kind of interesting afterwards.
Yeah, no, I was hesitating because I didn't know if any of you guys are in Thailand or go to Thailand, because apparently you can get arrested for making fun of the king there. But since I don't plan to go to Thailand, all right. So the guy's a nut job. He, as you know, in his 20s and 30s, he was like the crown prince, and he was hanging out in Switzerland. He was having orgies. He was running around the malls in Thailand in like drag, wearing like a tiny little t-shirt and little tiny boy shorts. This is the freaking king, right? And so, there were a lot of people in Thailand were like, no, this guy can't be king, because like people in Thailand look at the king like he's Jesus Christ traditionally, right? Tons of respect. And so this guy's just a lunatic, and now he's disappearing people in the cabinet, and he's just out there. So he's an extreme case, but I mean, to be honest, like the King of England is not much better. Prince Andrew is no better at all. But royals are not what they used to be. I'll just put it that way. For those who think that kings, sort of the Curtis Yarvin thing, where like, no, if we just get a king, this is all going to be fixed. No, the rot runs deeper than that. What I think is interesting on the debasement trade is that inflation worldwide has actually come down a lot, right? So a couple of years ago, everybody was talking about double digit. Now, I mean, it's 3, 4. I know it's government statistics, but still, it has clearly come down from what it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I think it's kind of interesting that now gold is taking off, silver taking off, Bitcoin, has been taking off. And I think what's happening there is that we're in the early stages of the shit hitting the fan, where people start to actually realize nothing stops this train. In other words, yes, the train slowed down compared to 2022, but what's more important in terms of price action is that people are understanding nothing stops this train. Why are they understanding that? I think that there's two big factors. One of them is what happened with Doge and Trump. So you had unified Republican control of Washington. They had been promising for 80 years that if you just give us the steering wheel, we're going to cut the spending. They did almost nothing. You had the absolute dream team. For all the shit Trump gets, every single year in his first term, he tried to make big cuts to government, 100, 200 billion cuts. He tried to slash whole agencies. Every time Congress told him to take a hike, he is by instinct a small government guy. Everything he did in the first term said that. I mean, COVID is special. That was his darkest moment. But broadly speaking, he's a small government guy. You had Elon Musk, who is obviously a small government guy. So you had the dream team. You had unified control. You had Trump. You had Elon. And I think they got like $13 billion worth of cuts. Same thing in Europe, right? If you look at the populist parties today, none of them are Ron Paul. Okay, these guys, they are blending nationalism with socialism, which happened before. They are all big government people, whether it's France, Poland. They want more spending. You're saying the same thing in Japan now. They just put in a populist prime minister to try to take some of the wind out of the sails of populists who are growing in Japan. Again, pro Wall Street, pro financial industry, pro big business, much more welfare spending. This is corporatism. So I think that when you put those together, shit's fucked up. And when you look at the sort of most likely ways to fix it, whether that's Alternative for Deutschland or Donald Trump, all of those are going to make it worse. None of those guys are fiscally conservative. There is no Ron Paul who's remotely close to power anywhere important in the world. So the inflation came down, but the realization, I think, is taking off.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And speaking of the Donald Trump and the kind of pushback as of late, what was the name of all the protests that just happened?
Yeah.
Okay,
No
so
King. Yes.
So funny story. You guys had your No Kings protests down there. Those spilled over into Canada, where also there were the same No Kings protests. However, Canada, the king is still Canada's head of state. And we have somebody called the Governor General that performs the king's constitutional duties in Canada, granting royal assent to any law changes. So I found it hilariously ironic, and enough people noticed the irony in that they actually changed the name of the protest to No Tyrants. so yeah, anyways, I thought you guys might find that kind of funny.
Well, this is kind of the bozo shit that I hate, is that we're at such a place of people not applying logic in any meaningful fucking way and just repeating whatever they parrot. And being here in San Francisco in the hub of liberalism, it's so interesting because I've just noticed every time I push on people's values, you get one of two things. You get a highly reactionary, you're racist, bigot, hateful, fascist, whatever. Or the other is that they just fucking crumble. And it's just I never thought about it that way. It's you legitimately never put these two very basic ideas together and spun it up in your own brain.
You can see the loading symbol.
Yeah, and it's this kind of brain rot has been really detrimental to the American public. Because I try to tell people look, I'm not right or left. Fuck Donald Trump. I think he sucks on a number of levels. And also fuck Gavin Newsom. He's obviously a piece of shit. But both of these people hate us and don't have a resolution. And so we really need to just look to ourselves to find a new solution. And you know, again, I'm not a fan of kings. Like, I actually think what we really need is to have some new political form vis-a-vis technology and the internet. I have no clue what that looks like, but it's very obvious to me that, like, we're at the point in the turning cycle that we need to have a true political revolution that involves changing the entirety of how the system functions in any meaningful way, even if we want to even have the same borders that nation states have had over the last, 200 years.
Yeah. It's how soon do you think that that fourth turning is going to come to that climax for you guys? What are you feeling?
We're in it.
Yeah, this is the climax, do you think?
We're in it. I mean, think about it, man. There's no trust in institutions whatsoever. People don't really believe in college. Gen Z feels disenfranchised. People don't trust CIA or Kash Patel or FBI or any of these people anymore. All they talked about was releasing Epstein files for 4 years, and then what happened? Nothing. So I think trust is at an all-time low in a lot of different regards. And just if you want to talk about society in general, I mean, I just got back from Spain. I was in Madrid and Sevilla. And when you come back from a country that's actually a country, it's so crazy coming back to the States, man. It just feels like this is such, I hate to be pessimistic because I'm not. I'm very optimistic. I have 2 little girls, but it just feels like late stage capitalism, late stage empire. It really does. No one really loves thy neighbor. No one really goes to city centers. No one, really has an inherent love for one another. It's almost like we're very divided and walking on eggshells, which is very detrimental to society, in my opinion.
It very much depends where you are. All right, if you're in like a small town in the South, then you're living in the 17th century in terms of
100%.
Health of community. Everybody says good morning, right? I mean, it is a huge difference. Yeah. What I've been impressed, I think, is that after 100 years of socialist debasement, there is so much culture still left in. You look at like. On TV, blacks and whites hate each other, and the rich and the poor, and the gays and the straight. Okay, day to day, that's not how people actually are. Like, that's like this funhouse mirror of people fighting because if it bleeds, it leads. And like in reality, what I think's been exciting. So Trump, for example, got 1 in 4 black male votes, which, traditionally, like if you were a black man and you were voting for a Republican, you were off the bus, man. There was a problem with you. I think that a lot of people, Hispanics, he came within 5 points on Hispanic Americans, which again, that was supposed to be one of the, sort of client Leninist demographics to launch the revolution, and so much for that. So I think that what's exciting, I completely agree with you, Marko, that people have lost faith in institutions. This is very much a kind of fourth turning moment. I think we're just coming into it. I think COVID, honestly, was the single biggest blow on that, where the sort of Fabian socialists, meaning socialism where you do it step by step and you kind of infect them without them realizing it. Fabian socialism, I think, has already taken over the West. It largely took it over during the World Wars. That was part of the reason they started the World Wars, in my opinion. But people didn't, people didn't realize that it was sort of being infused. They were raising each new education of student in that socialist substrate, so people were just taking it for granted. But I think what happened in COVID is that it's sort of like the army was set up. They were waiting for the right moment. They were waiting for the weather to clear. And COVID was just too good of an opportunity. They couldn't pass it up, and they went for the gold. They said, this is our moment. That was the Great Reset. They started burning down cities. It's like they launched everything before they were ready, right? They didn't have the supply chain set up. They didn't have enough ammunition. They weren't there yet. They needed to wait another generation before they did that. They did it too early. And it was so obvious, right? For just regular people who are kind of non-combatants in the ideological battle, like when you see something like how, what was it? The Sturgis bike rally in South Dakota was like a mass murder event because everybody was going to get the COVID. And then the BLM riots, no, those were cool because the institutional racism and the global warming. It was so transparent.
Mostly peaceful. Sorry? I said mostly peaceful.
They were mostly peaceful. Yes. Most of the cities did not burn, in fact. And so, like, it was so transparent, I think, for the non-combatants. They needed another generation to get another 10, 15% of the population over the line to sufficiently brainwash them, because it takes a couple generations, right? The first generation to brainwash a kid, he's still got the parents infecting him with wrong thing. takes a couple generations. So I think they launched too early. You combine that now with fundamentally the internet and specifically social media. It's basically Gutenberg 2.0, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gutenberg in the 1400s, that was the printing press. The magic of it was that before Gutenberg, if you wanted to write something down, you had to hire a bunch of monks. Not only was that extremely expensive to mass produce, but the monks had to be cool with it. Gutenberg meant you could crank out 5,000 pamphlets. You could send it to all the towns in southern Germany, and you could say, we're being robbed by this duke. Meet next Sunday, and we're going to have a word about it. Okay, peasant revolts across the entire country. Now, that is exactly what the internet is. It's what social media is. So that was the kindling. And then I think the COVID early launch was the spark. So I think we are absolutely, these next 5-10 years are going to be, there's going to be tragedies. But anyway, I'm kind of excited to see what happens here.
That's such a positive way to spin it.
Like, one of the things I think is interesting.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I think is interesting is that I think because of with how substantial the Gini coefficient is and how disenfranchised the youth are, like I expect a lot of them to pivot into like a hardcore boot stomping socialist movement. But I think what they don't understand is that, frankly, like they don't get what it means to try to actually have a radical movement. And I think that in the course of that happening, they're going to get their teeth just kicked in because like there still is this hardcore contingency of individuals that really want to be non-combatants, and they're forced to be pulled into a lot of this crazy bullshit, very similar to how COVID pointed out. And I think people are getting angry about it. And when that war comes to their front porch, they're going to say, this is bullshit. I'm not participating, and I'm going to move very hard against it. So like, well, I do think there's going to be some real rabble rousing and problems. Like, I just think it's so interesting that these movements, if they actually had strong leadership and real conviction towards what they were doing, they could do some serious damage. But like, they're all these they're just really flabby. Like, I don't know. It's like this isn't like a Lenin or anybody. This is like some fat chick with green hair and like that, like nobody's going to follow her into a grocery store, like nonetheless to like storm the Bastille with her. So like, I don't know. And it's like, not necessarily to hate on her specifically, but like, these aren't powerful figures that you want to lead you into the future. Like this is a symptom of a collapsing society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think
it's
like a fiat revolution. It's just embarrassing. There's this funny effect in the U.S. anyway, and I suspect also in Canada and Europe. So there was a Unite the Right rally a couple years ago, right, where they were carrying the torches in Virginia, and a lot of the leaders of that, which it was kind of extreme in terms of even among Trump supporters. A lot of the leaders of that were former Bernie Sanders guys. These were Bernie bros. To the extent that in the beginning, people were like, no, this was false flag. They were, no. These guys had flipped from Bernie to Trump. And I mean, they were still, kind of insane. So they were doing crazy stuff. But the moral of the story is that, in a sense, if you look at the sort of marketing funnel into populism, it includes a boot stomping left winger stage for, however long that is, 2-3 years. And then, you have to get a job, you have to pay taxes, you have to, you have a mortgage, you have your kid in school with the stupid public school teachers. People flip over, but they don't they don't become accountants, right? They become rabble rousers for the other side. I mean, you see people like Scott Pressler. I mean, Jordan Peterson used to be a left winger. Elon Musk was a left winger with the book, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, right? All of these people are flipping over. And when they flip, they don't decommission themselves and become non-combatants. They are just as energetic as they were, but now they flip sides.
You see that with who's the girl, Young Turks alongside Cheng
Kasparian.
On the Kasparian. You see that, like, those wheels turning in her head too. Like she's doing a lot of that. But I mean, people are just. It just speaks to the discontent, right? Like, people are pissed. They want radical change. They don't know what that change is because, as Eric outlined, they haven't thought through a number of like basic principles and like ideas and mashed them together to see what happens when they think about it. It's just I'm angry, shit sucks, let's burn it all down. Oh, my team didn't burn it all down. It was the status quo. I'll jump to the other side. Oh shit, more status quo. What do we do? I mean, there's your climax when people realize that no matter what side of the fence they're on, it's the status quo. And I think, yes, we're coming up to that point. Now, before we continue on here, I'm conscious of time. Marko, I know you've got like limited time left. So I want to do a rotation. Peter, I'll give you a final word here because it sounded like you really wanted. You're good? Okay. So, but we're going to go for a quick 1 minute break. But on the other side of it, actually, Peter, I'm going to stay with you because I want to find out why you're so bullish, what you're currently excited about. And then we'll get Marko and Erik to chime in. For everybody that's watching right now, for the few thousand people that have already joined into the show, make sure you drop a like on the video if you're enjoying the conversation. And again, as I said before, if you're brand new to kind of this Bitcoin space or you know, just love hearing about the news and everything, but you have not taken the steps to actually learn and put the rubber to the road and actually self-custody your Bitcoin, please do take those steps. Again, there's QR code on the screen. You can scrub back through the video and scan it, or go in the show notes. There's btcsessions.ca/learn. Please, please, please take the time to begin learning how to actually properly self-custody your Bitcoin and protect your sound money from all of the bullshit that we've just been talking about right now. Because when shit hits the fan, if you're not protected, then it's very easy to yoink your money from a custodial exchange. So make sure you do take those steps. Anyways, we're going to be back in 1 minute. We're going to find out why Peter is so damn bullish. See you guys in a sec. Looking for a simple and secure way to manage your Bitcoin on mobile? AQUA Wallet has you covered. It's user-friendly and puts you in full control of your Bitcoin with secure self-custody. AQUA also supports Lightning and Liquid Network, making fast, cheap Bitcoin payments and asset transfers easier than ever. Plus, it even supports stablecoins, giving you ultimate flexibility. Built on open source code, AQUA is transparent, trustworthy, and perfect for beginner and pros alike. Ready to upgrade your Bitcoin experience? Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen now to download AQUA Wallet today. Securing your Bitcoin doesn't have to be complicated or invasive. With NUNCHUK's HONEYBADGER plan, you get state-of-the-art multisig with built-in inheritance planning and no KYC required. NUNCHUK is trusted by users to secure billions of dollars in Bitcoin. The HONEYBADGER plan offers 204 assisted multisig, guiding you step-by-step on mobile or desktop. It works seamlessly with hardware wallets like TapSigner, Coldcard, Jade, and plenty of others, so you're always in control. Plus, with non-KYC inheritance planning, you can ensure your Bitcoin goes to your loved ones. No private info needed. Take control of your Bitcoin today. Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen to check out the HONEYBADGER plan. All right, we are back. And Peter, you get the final word here. I'm going to toss it to you and we're going to find out why are you bullish.
All right. So we've got the debasement thing, talked about that. The other thing that I'm excited about is the generational trade. So there's this great line by Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He says, anything invented before you're born is normal, ordinary, it's part of the world. Anything invented up to age 35 is new and interesting. Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order. A lot of you guys will know that quote. Bitcoin, right? I think the fundamental question in Bitcoin is, will fiat die? And if it dies, what are we going to switch to? We're going to switch to gold. We're going to switch to Bitcoin. If fiat dies, how much is Bitcoin worth? Right. So that's pretty easy. You take all the money in the world, you divide it by all the Bitcoin in the world, you get 5-6 million. Boom. There you go. So the question is, what are the probabilities? I think we are almost certain, we've been talking about it all, that fiat is going to die. The question is simply when. It's died many, many times before. All of the trends that we're seeing right now have been repeated many times, as the Roman Empire, the Song Dynasty, China. Fiat dies 100% on a long enough timeline. And then the question is, what do we flip to? That Douglas Adams quote, right? That idea that, like, if fiat dies next Tuesday, almost certainly we're going to go to gold, and then we're going to be sitting about kvetching about how Bitcoin is better than gold. If, however, fiat dies in 10 years or, even 5 years, there's an escalating chance that we're going to skip the gold section. We're just going to straight to Bitcoin. So fundamentally, partly we were talking earlier how as Bitcoiners age, they have more assets and now they can put more money into it. That's one factor that I think is a huge tailwind for Bitcoin. But the other is that demographic question. Now, it doesn't have to die for that to impact the price, right? Like, it's kind of a dynamic equation. So you ask, all right, when is fiat going to die? So it's almost like the longer fiat lasts, the better it is for Bitcoin, because the more likelihood that we just go switch straight over to Bitcoin. And so asymptotically, therefore, as those probabilities increase, both that fiat dies younger and that more and more people are using Bitcoin, they're accustomed to it. It was, invented before they're born, and they actually have assets. They actually have influence over organizations. As that happens over time, I think that we're destined to asymptotically approach that $5-6 million mark in today's dollars.
I agree. I would love for that change to take place. First of all, it gives time for myself, my family to, stack away a bit of a nest egg. And for all the existing Bitcoiners that even like the brand new people just coming in right now, maybe watching the show for the first time, are thinking I'm too late. And that's couldn't be further from the truth, right? Like if you're trying to measure something that is static in supply, and your measuring stick grows forever at an increasing rate, then your vision of what expensive is going to be very skewed. Whereas the value in the broken ruler is always going to go up forever because it's broken. And I would love enough of a timeline where, again, I've got young kids. I got 2 kids, and my daughter's just old enough to start learning about this stuff. She has her own little Lightning wallet. Actually, Eric, you saw her at the SAT market, and she was, sending and receiving sats between the merchants and everything. I would love her to not only like continue learning about Bitcoin, but for the timeline to work out where, as you're saying, Peter, it takes a little bit longer to come to fruition, but we actually move to a money that solves a lot of these problems. Because if we move back to gold, what does that look like? Well, a similar situation. We're going to put some gold in vaults, and then we're going to have an extraction of that. We're going to have an abstraction of that in the form, a digital form of some sort. But there's nothing explicitly linking, even if you have a blockchain. So again, new people, somebody's throwing the term blockchain at you, and it's on the blockchain. It's bullshit. It's like nothing explicitly links a token on a blockchain to a physical asset, for sure, right? You can say there's a token that represents an ounce of gold, but that ounce of gold can be stolen and there's still a token that exists. So, I think that if we were to move to a gold standard, we'd get some flavor of that, and people would erroneously think for a period of time, well, this is better than what we had before, but it's not. It might be quicker to transact, but like if the underlying asset is disappeared and the actual tokens you're using can inflate forever, then what the hell's the difference? So yeah, I like that thought, and it makes me a little less annoyed at watching crab walks. It makes me enjoy them a little bit more. So I want to get Marko's take on this too. I know you're coming to time, but I want your thoughts on what Peter said.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I just want to leave everyone with, first of all, Ben, thank you for inviting me. I do have to get my daughter from aftercare, ironically. But yeah, with what Peter said, I completely agree. I think at the end of the day, you guys, you have to zoom out when you feel like selling, which should be usually never, at least in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Just take a step back, check your fundamentals. Has anything changed? Has the bull case changed? Has some new technology been introduced that's really going to affect Bitcoin? And the answer in 2025, October 22nd of 2025, is no. So for me, I'm still not selling. I'm going to be holding for many, many years to come. And if you have children or someone that you care about or a charity that you care about, think of them before you click the sell button, because you may regret it. So I do have to run, you guys. Thank you so much for having me, Ben. Nice meeting you, Eric. Peter, nice talking to you.
Cheers, Marko. Appreciate it.
See you guys. Thank you.
Awesome. And everybody, make sure if you enjoyed Marko's takes here, you can check him out. Links down below to to check out where he's at. But Erik, I'm going to toss it over to you as well. Your thoughts on having some low time preference towards the adoption of Bitcoin. What's your take here?
I mean, for starters, like we're like 15 years in, you know, like the fact that we have accrued this much value, that this many people get, like, it's very clear that this is a mind virus that takes time for people to understand. And if you legitimately let yourself dive into the game theory of how this all works, you come to the same conclusion, you know? And so like, I've been involved with this for more than a decade now. And what I find so interesting is that, like, I was just an insane person for a long time. I just went to the game theory on my own. I decided to throw my weight behind, you know, working at Bitcoin companies because I was very excited about my own conclusions. And lo and behold, more and more people came to the exact same conclusions. And to be clear, like, this wasn't like the Neanderthal that like I talked to football about, but like this was always like really brilliant individuals that like I had a lot of respect for how their minds worked. And the fact that they came to the same conclusions as I did was a really important thing. And this is the same reason why we all didn't come to the same conclusion as gold. We get that like gold has a very real problem. It's that like I can show up with my army and like take all of your gold. That's kind of what the entire story of the 20th century was for those of you who skipped history class. And so like it's really important that we actually have this mechanism. Same thing with like Bitcoin has cryptography at its base, not just because we like big numbers and think it's really fun, but that like it's fundamentally part of war theory and game theoretics that have been played out. And these are all really important things that go in with the same reason why the hash rate functions as it does, why it takes actual computational electrical energy. So anybody who is a relatively smart individual that can recursively go back down into every single question that they have about why is Bitcoin the answer and not fucking Zcash, as this cycle seems to be about. You know, I'm like, there's always gonna, and like that's the one that hurts me the most and makes me the most frustrated is that people are like, yeah, but XRP, and like I just want to stab them with a fork. Not that I would do that, but it's just like, come on, guys, like it's XRP is not the answer. It's not Zcash. It's not any of this other garbage, and it's because of those game theories of how the actual mechanics work. You know, and so for the Zcash bros recently, like, it's a fucking VC coin. 80% is owned by a bunch of guys that I can go hold a blowtorch tour and get 80% of the supply. That's not fucking secure. That's something else. That's security theater. Big difference between these two. So on a long-term time span, like when you do the actual hard work, that's probably a few hundred hours to really understand why it is Bitcoin and not any of these other things and not gold or anything else. You really come to a core understanding that like this is the answer that humanity has been waiting for to solve this very difficult problem that also involves really a chain of historical development that like Bitcoin could only be created in 2009 because of all of the technology that came up to 2006. And so getting that understanding is important. Understanding why a denominator is the quintessential invention that Satoshi really came up with. Like, all other things we can find more of in the world, including gold. Like you can't make any more Bitcoin, and you can know the exact number of Bitcoins that are out in the world today. Like that's an extremely important thing because all other things can be inflated through either acquiring more of them or just changing the fucking number at the bottom like our government seems to like to do frequently. So like, I just really encourage anybody who's slightly on the fence or there are a couple things that you don't know, like do the legwork. Like do your proof of work and figure it out. And like, if you conclude that like Bitcoin's wrong, please let me know. I would really like to know. Like I'm not this bullish on Bitcoin just because like number go up. Like I sincerely believe that this resolves a lot of the core issues of humanity and how we've functioned and why we've had to go into these giant and horrific world wars that have been financed by fiat money throughout the 20th century. And the final note on this is that like, this is the thing that can actually end the horrific socialism experiment that we've been doing for the last 100 years. Like this shit doesn't work, okay? Like you don't get to steal shit from people and redistribute it and like expect people to be like, yeah, I'm gonna work hard and build a company when I know the government's gonna steal it and redistribute it to a bunch of people who don't deserve it. Like that shit doesn't work. And so like that's why Bitcoin does work, is because like you actually own it. The government can't come put a gun to your head and take it like they can do with a house, a business, or your gold. And that's a really important feature that I think, and I hope that people really understand. So that's kind of my diatribe about my long-term perspective and why Bitcoin is so important.
I have a question for both of you guys in regards to, again, Eric, earlier you were talking about having the internet as this ability. This is why kind of that early COVID, like jumping the gun, being able to communicate and get all the information out to everybody and not be censored has allowed things to kind of accelerate. And I'm wondering if that we're reaching a point now where the understanding that Bitcoin is the thing is getting very close to being a given for a lot of people. And the reason I say that is because this cycle, there's a couple things that have happened. Number one, most of the shitcoin stuff has been overt garbage, like that there's no use case. It's the meme coin thing, right? Meme coins are just an outward overt admission that this has no value. It's purely speculative. It's garbage. And we're just going to see what pumps and gamble on it, right? Like this like the most honest that crypto has ever been. But then you've got the odd thing like Zcash or XRP that rears its ugly head again and people get taken for it. But it's not ubiquitous everywhere. It's like a few people get sucked in, sucks for a while for them, and then they learn. The other thing that's happened is a lot of people, and there's always lessons that even Bitcoiners that understand it's only Bitcoin learn, is that just because you understand it's only Bitcoin doesn't mean that you know everything. So last cycle it was like leverage products, and then holy shit, just because I understand it's Bitcoin only doesn't mean I can't still screw up by levering myself to the tits and then catching a downswing, catching a dip and getting liquidated. And this time there's, what's the story of this cycle? It's the treasury companies. And right now there seems to be a narrative like there's enough guardrails that no wrong can be done. And I don't think that's true at all. I could tell clearly that you don't either. Is it a good idea if you have a solid business that actually makes money? If you're able to create value for others, spend less than you earn, does it make sense to save in Bitcoin as an individual or a company? I think that's a no-brainer. But when the main reason you own a company is because that company owns Bitcoin, I think that becomes a major problem. And yeah, I think there's fuckery afoot. And I think that people will be finding out in short order. But my main question is this close to the final boss where people are like, Bitcoin only? They're just now saying like, well, I'm getting exposure to Bitcoin through this thing because people are trying to get more Bitcoin and the Bitcoin per share and all of that stuff. If that gets knocked off as like, oh crap, things can go wrong with that too. Are there many more final bosses beyond that in understanding that Bitcoin is the thing?
I honestly think this is like a recursive structure, and like we've hit our cadence, and that like there's always going to be like some new form of that. Like, I like Bitcoin, you should give me your Bitcoin. Like the treasuries, this is just the iteration of like Bitcoin leverage products in 2021, and like that's just the iteration of like the shitcoin ICOs from 2017, and like that's just the iteration of like the altcoins of like the 2014 cycle. So like this is all something repeatedly. So like I think that these blow up, we get a bull rally. Like the next iteration is like nation states like holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Like Bitcoin's a wonderful economic vehicle, but like it doesn't change the fundamental finances of that. Like if you have a shitty company that like doesn't make fucking money and you just like buy a bunch of Bitcoin, lo and behold, when it comes time to pay the bills and you have to liquidate your Bitcoin, and that like turns out that that's like below what you bought for it, like you're in a shitty position and you're going to destroy your company as it should, And so it's very similar to like Bitcoin is a wonderful vehicle for savings, but like it doesn't resolve the fact that like if you're not cash flow positive in a meaningful way, like you don't have money. So like I personally think that like, you know, and then after the nation state blows up, it'll be like the robot armies that like have their own Bitcoin treasury, and then it's like the drone fleet that has theirs, and like it's just gonna go on until like finally it's like Mars has their own Bitcoin treasury, and because they're outside of the hash horizon, this like somehow allows them to try to break Bitcoin. I don't know. So like, I'm pretty confident at this point. Yeah, the hash, like this is a concept that Drew came up with about his Bitcoin astronomy. So like, but you know, like to me, the great thing is that people are actually thinking about what it means to have a hard asset like Bitcoin, and that we're past the bullshit stage of people like, well, the government loves you, and why would they ever make it so that we don't have Social Security? It's like, yeah, the government does hate me, and yeah, I'm never going to get access to that, and what am I going to do? So I do think that the Bitcoin treasury thing is going to blow up in the face of a bunch of people who, you know, like my motto is always like, I like Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin. And that's essentially what a Bitcoin treasury company is, because whether, you know, and to be fair, MicroStrategy is the one that played the game a bit different, and they got a lead on that. Every other treasury company, it seems to be problematic for a whole series of reasons. So like, I don't touch this shit because like every time I start worrying about it, I go, whoa, like, hang on, like I have my Bitcoin, I have it in a way that is multi-sig and recoverable in a meaningful way. That's my investment plan. I don't need to go play this bullshit game of buying some Bitcoin treasury that has leverage products that does this, that. To me, that's a losing game, and it's losing because I've already overthought about it way too much. Just like buy your Bitcoin, hold it in your own self-custodial setup, and like chill, and that's it.
Pretty easy formula. Peter, your thoughts here.
Yeah, so people have an inherent urge to gamble. This has been true for a very long time. Stock bubbles, you know, there were bubbles in the 1600s. They invented the diving bell, and they were like, think of all the gold on all the floors of all the oceans. And I think Isaac Newton actually wiped out on that bubble. So, I mean, okay, bubbles will always be here. There's an inherent massive speculation built into Bitcoin to the extent that you are, whether you want to or not, you are gambling on the probability that Bitcoin becomes the dominant money. That's also true in gold. So I did a back of envelope calculation, and between 91 and 95% of gold's value is monetary speculation. Okay, if you break down the monetary demand for gold, the jewelry demand, the industrial demand, it adds up to like, I don't know, $300 or something. Almost all of it is monetary speculation, which is why gold, many times since the 70s, gold has doubled or dropped in half in a number of years. Now, if you're naive, you would say, wait a minute, that's crazy. How can you run an economy on a currency? You know, gold sucks, right? And, you know, of course, no, the answer is gold itself is wonderful. The issue is that there's this massive monetary speculation built into any alternative money that exists in gold. Gold goes up, you know, 2x, falls 2x. That's going to be much, much bigger in Bitcoin. So I think we are going to continue seeing these. You know, if you look at the AI bubble right now, AI is just eating everything. It's like 40% of economic growth, I think David Sachs claims. The dot-com bubble was similar. Actually, the AI bubble is bigger at the moment, having lived through dot-com. Until Bitcoin has that kind of a blow-off, and, you know, without a doubt, if Bitcoin right now were in the kind of bubble that AI were, then you would have governments, you know, threatening the rate. I mean, you would have all kinds of political shenanigans going on. When that happens, that's the final boss battle. But I don't think, we're probably not decades from that. I think, just like Erik said, we'll continue seeing these. You know, they'll keep finding new things. There'll be Bitcoin leverage, there'll be treasuries, there'll be something else next year. They'll constantly have that. They're actually relatively restrained in the grand scheme of the universe, right? If Bitcoin is 10x the speculation that gold is, I'm actually impressed. Like, a crab walk is progress. You know, 2-3 years ago, the joke with Bitcoin was, you know, you go to Starbucks and they said that'll be $7, that'll be $2, that'll be $12, and be like, wait, let me pay, stop changing the price. Okay, so, you know, there is value to having something with a little bit more stability than Bitcoin had certainly 5 years ago.
That's fair. That's fair. I Maybe next cycle ends up being the rush to Bitcoin-backed bonds, and there's a whole bunch of speculation there.
Yes, that's a great
Government bonds. Yeah. Well, we shall see. But either way, if you're watching this, don't fall for it. Just buy the Bitcoin, as Erik said. Get a good self-custody set up, and you're good to go. Gentlemen, I'm conscious of time. I'm going to round down now, but I do want to give you guys the chance to let people know what you're up to and where to find you. So, Erik, I'll start with you. People, if they want to find you, what you're up to, the projects that you're working on, anything like that, let them know where to find you and what you're doing.
Yeah, best place to find me is on Twitter. It's just my name, Erik Cason. You can follow me there. I have a book called Crypto Sovereignty. It's really about sort of the philosophical and the philosophical integration of Bitcoin sort of into a larger framework of the world. And sort of extending on that mission, I've co-founded a company called Vora. We're essentially trying to build a private AI box that's going to be a server that lives at your home that is encrypted, and like you fully own everything on an open source LLM that you're running, because AI is in a massive bubble, and that's why like every single piece of shit startup that you find is doing something like that. And so our long vision is that we're going to integrate an HSM that's a hardware security module that's air gapped into it, so that your Bitcoin can live there too, and that this can be your one-stop shop to have your personal home server that can store your Bitcoin and do everything else in it. And we're just kind of in the early stages of finishing our pre-seed, bringing on head of AI relatively soon. And we're really excited because I co-founded this with my best friend, who is also one of the main security architects, both at Coinbase and then later on at BitKey. So we got a really powerful team, and we're really excited about making it so you have a private AI that you can ask all of your questions, and it's not going to go to Elon Musk or Sam Altman or anybody else, because that's going to become really valuable information as we start using it more and more. So with that being said, check it out. We're always welcome to feedback, and you can reach out to us at the links up below. So.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I joined the wait list to find out stuff, but Vora.io, that's right?
Yep.
Awesome. Peter, same to you. Let people know where they can find you, what you're up to, all that stuff.
Yep. So I make daily videos up on Twitter. They're a little 3.5 minute, sort of covering what's the major news of the day, focusing on economics and freedom. I also do monthly recaps of what the heck is going on in the economy. So Prof St Onge, Prof Stonge on Twitter, and then you can also find it on YouTube and the other ones.
Awesome. And I will say that your videos are so nice. They're fun and they're very easily digestible. It's a nice start to any day when you pull up a Peter St Onge video and enjoy his awesome takes on what's going on. What's your little tagline? What the clowns are doing, or how do you phrase it?
Yeah, what the clowns are doing to you, and yep, always will be watching. Yeah.
Nice. I love it. So yeah, please do check out Peter and Erik, and of course Marko over at WhiteBoard Finance. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Again, follow everybody here. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed the conversation. And of course, as I've been trumpeting throughout the video, please do dive into becoming more self-sovereign, learning about self-custody with Bitcoin. I always play a little clip at the end of these shows, and that will tell you exactly where to go for that. So gentlemen, I appreciate you. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for getting bullish with me on a Wednesday. See you guys soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. If I can learn to play it.
There
here we
go.
Anyways, we'll see you guys later. Cheers. Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.